If you're thinking about moving to the Seattle area, you first want to know what the pros and cons are. That's a great way to start. And I'm going to tell you what those are next. All right, the food here is amazing. That's one of the pros of living in Seattle. You're gonna have a ton of options to choose from, such as seafood, great teriyaki. You're gonna have amazing Chinese food as well, steak restaurants. There's Brazilian restaurants, Caribbean food. So you'll have a ton of options here. And if you like to eat out or just try different types of cuisine, then Seattle is gonna be an amazing place for that. The summers here are, in my opinion, you can't beat them. I've been to many places and summers in Seattle are just great. The weather is in the 80s. Sometimes we'll get into the high 80s. And it looks amazing with the water at the peninsula area of Seattle. And then you have Lake Washington by Bellevue. And there's just a lot of outdoor activities to do. And when the weather is great, it's really tough to beat being here in the summer in Seattle. You have a lot of different variety of neighborhoods. So you have a mixture of places that have views of the mountains. You have areas that have views of the lake. You have different neighborhoods that have waterfront properties on the Puget Sound near downtown Seattle area. You're gonna have neighborhoods that have forest in the backyard, so it looks like you're in the wilderness. And then you'll have different neighborhoods as well that are in the city, downtown Seattle, a mixture of restaurants near you and different shopping and stores where you can walk to. And then just the different types of companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Depending on where you work, you can live close by there, walk to work, or bike to work. So you'll have a lot of variety of types of neighborhoods here that have a mixture that will appeal to practically anyone. Next is job opportunities. The job market here in Seattle has always been great, and part of the reason for that, and a major reason, is because of the large corporations that we have here, such as Amazon. The headquarters are located here. You have Microsoft in Redmond, you have Boeing, you have Starbucks, Costco, and there's a lot of other companies that have moved here because they want to be near these other tech companies as well, such as Amazon and Microsoft. So you have large Silicon Valley corporations that are putting offices here and wanting to expand so that they can compete for the talent that we have here locally. Another benefit of living in the greater Seattle area is the top-rated schools. The schools and school districts here are some of the top rated in all of the US. So if education is important to you and you want to put your kids into a school that have great ratings, you're going to have plenty of options here in the greater Seattle area for that. No state income tax. Believe it or not, here in Washington State, you don't have to pay income tax. In other states, in addition to your federal taxes that you have to pay state income tax as well. Well, in Washington, that's not applicable here, which is a great benefit because if you were to calculate maybe for your job what you would make in a different state, even if it paid a little bit more, here you're gonna still have competitive wages, but not paying that state income tax will help you maybe make even more when you calculate your numbers compared to different states where you might work. Outdoor activities are amazing here. You can drive to the mountains and go on a great hike. You can do a hike that's a couple of hours. You can do hikes that are multiple days depending on how you want to do it. That's something you can do. On the other hand, you can just drive to the Puget Sound, or you can drive all the way to the coast. You can drive to Olympic National Park. There's a lot of places nearby that you can drive to if you like the outdoors. And if you want to go to the lake, you can bring your boat to the lake on Lake Washington. And then also if you want the saltwater feel, then you can go on the Puget Sound and then eventually all the way to where the Pacific Ocean is. So if you're outdoors type person, you're gonna have plenty of options here in the Seattle area to do just that. Another benefit to living in the greater Seattle area is low property taxes. Property taxes are gonna be around 1%, which is not that bad because in some other states it gets close to 2% and sometimes above that. So if you're paying for a property that you purchased, you don't want to have to pay too much taxes because that's not going to go towards your principal, meaning the balance of the loan that you have on the house. So if you can save that amount and put it towards a mortgage instead, then you can pay off your house even faster. So low property taxes is another benefit of living in Washington State and in the greater Seattle area. Okay, here's another one. No crazy bugs or spiders or any of that. I know this might seem silly to talk about, but it's really not. If you've ever been to the East Coast or different states, There's a lot of bugs, some that make a lot of noises. They're large, they're kind of everywhere. In Arizona, for example, there's scorpions, and there's different types of critters that people don't want to be near. And in Washington, honestly, there's not much of that at all. If you do see any spiders here, at least in the greater Seattle area, in eastern Washington, it's a little bit different. But here in by the Puget Sound and on the west side of Washington, in the greater Seattle area, you're not gonna find a ton of these huge spiders or all these crazy bugs and just kind of creeping everywhere. If you are wanting to avoid some of that, then Washington State and in the Seattle area, that'll be a benefit for you if you were to move here. Another one that may be obvious is coffee. Coffee is very important to the people who live here. There's coffee huts, there's coffee shops that serve amazing coffee, and it's just going to be a higher quality. It's very important here. This is where Starbucks started, and the coffee scene is huge, and you're going to find a great cup of coffee anywhere you go. Of course, there's always going to be places that are better than others, but because you have so many options here and variety, you're going to have a lot of selection, and you're guaranteed to find a place that you'll love. So coffee is a huge thing here, and it's a pro to living here if you enjoy drinking it. Another one is there's no real major natural disasters here. There's from time to time they may show on the news that there was a tornado forming, but it never really hits the ground, or if it does, it's very weak. It's very rare that you ever see that. I know there's been talk that there might be a tsunami in the future if there's a fault line that ruptures near Alaska, and that could come in towards downtown Seattle. But remember, Seattle is huge. The greater Seattle area extends 30-40 miles out in each way towards the east and north and south, with a ton of population of people living there. So if you've ever seen documentaries or anything regarding that, I'm not too worried about it, and there's no huge threat from a fault line that I know of an earthquake going directly through the city like some other parts in California. And regarding flooding and tornadoes, hurricanes, all of that, you don't have to really worry about that. Flooding here is not that common because you have a lot of hills, and so the water just naturally will go off into the rivers and into the bay, and so it's not a real big issue here. So if you're wanting to avoid natural disasters, then the greater Seattle area might be just for you. Another benefit if you're a sports fan is that we have major sports teams. So we have the Seattle Seahawks, we have the Seattle Mariners for baseball, we have the Seattle Kraken for hockey, and we have for Major League Soccer, we have the Sounders. We don't have a basketball team yet, but that may change in the near future. There has been talks about an NBA team coming to Seattle, and I think it will happen eventually. But if you're into sports, you're gonna have plenty of options to attend these different sporting events, and it's a great place and a great scene for the sporting world. Okay, what are some of the reasons why you may not want to move to the Seattle area? Number one is the high cost of living. It is more expensive to live here. The housing prices are higher compared to most states, and it's comparable to San Francisco and New York and LA. The job market here is very strong, so you have a lot of people that can afford the homes here and are willing to pay the price to be close into the city or close by work. If you go further out, then you can find more affordable housing that can be easily 30 to 40% off of what you would pay compared to being in the central part of Seattle, Bellevue, Redmond, where Microsoft is. So that is something to consider. Also just grocery shopping. If you go to restaurants, if you want to do activities like trampoline park or bowling or things like that, it will be more expensive than some other parts of the US. For example, if you were to make $100,000 and you lived in Seattle, it would be equivalent to about $49,000 based on some sources online if you lived in a different state. So that's to give you an idea of $100,000 isn't worth the same in all states because of the cost of living and of housing and different items that I mentioned. So you do have to make quite a bit of money to live comfortably here compared to other states like in the Midwest or in the south part of the US. Weather. Now, I mentioned earlier that we don't have any real major natural disasters, but if you know anything about Seattle, you most likely know that it rains a lot here. But here's the thing I want to clarify. It is a con, but it doesn't rain all the time. So a lot of people think it rains all day, every day, for many days straight. That's not the case. What will happen is it'll rain maybe for a couple of hours on one day, and then the rest of the day, it could be sunny, or actually it could just be cloudy, but without rain. So the weather when you look at the weather forecast, it might show 5 straight days of rain, right? But it's not the whole day that it's raining. It might just be for a small portion of that day. Another thing about the weather is that it will get colder into the 20s and 30s at times. So there will be freezing temperatures. There will be snow at times. There's been more snow as of late, so do keep that in mind if you move here. A lot of people have all-wheel drive vehicles just in case in the winter when it snows they can get around more easily. Be aware that if you move here, you'll have to deal with the rain in those fall, winter, spring months, but also at times you'll have to deal with snow. But it's not going to be snow regularly for weeks at a time. Usually it will happen once or twice per year, and then it'll melt usually soon after it comes down. Another con of living in the Seattle area is traffic. Traffic begins around 5:30 a.m. until 9:30 a.m. and then it begins again at around 1:30 p.m. to about 6:30 p.m. If you're going into the major cities where the major workplaces are, then you will have to deal with traffic. There's a lot of construction as well that is happening in these cities, so you will have traffic earlier. But if you want to be closer to the city, you will avoid some of that traffic. But even then, if you're closer, maybe 15 minutes away from work with no traffic, it can easily become 40-50 minutes in traffic when it gets really congested. So keep that in mind. The traffic here can get pretty bad, and it was voted, I think, top 10 worst in the US. So if you work from home, that's great. If you don't and you have to commute, consider moving closer to your workplace so that you can avoid some of that traffic. All right, I hope you enjoyed this list of the pros and cons of living in the greater Seattle area. If you have any questions about moving here, or if you're looking to find a place, reach out to me and I'd love to help you out with that. If you live here already and if you have some pros and cons that you want to share, please go ahead and put those in the comments below. I'd love to read them, and I'm sure the viewers would as well. Go ahead and take a look at my other content, as I have several other videos that I've made on my channel, and those videos might interest you as well. Thank you again, and have a great day.